Hey, brand builder, Rory Vaden here. Thank you so much for tuning in to listen to this interview. We are so excited to bring you this information and wanted to let you know that, hey, there's no sales pitch coming from anything that we do. This is all our value add to you and the community. However, if you are somebody who is looking for specific strategies on how to build and monetize your personal brand, we would love to talk to you. And we offer a free call to everyone that's interested in getting to know us and is willing to give us a chance to get to know them and share a little bit about what we do. So if you're interested in taking us up on a free strategy call, you can do that at brandbuildersgroup.com/summit call. brandbuildersgroup.com/summit call. Hope to talk to you soon. On with the show. One of my favorite books of all time is a book called The Go-Giver. Sold about 1 million copies and is written by the man you are about to meet, who is a longtime friend of mine, Bob Burg. He co-authored that book and several others with John David Mann, who is also a longtime friend of mine. And they turned it into a Go-Giver series. Their newest parable is called The Go-Giver Influencer. But Bob and I met, I believe, through Zig Ziglar way back in the day. And that was how we got connected. And then we've just known each other over the years. He is a Hall of Fame speaker. He's spoken for so many great companies, even a former U.S. president. Speaks all over the world, and these days is more focused on just building up a community and impacting people from home in a world of COVID, like we all are. And we hadn't connected in a while, and so Bob, I'm honored that you're here, my friend. It's good to see you.
The honor's mine, Rory. One of my all-time favorite people, which I believe you know. I hope you know that.
Well, thank you. It's funny because I knew you personally long before I read The Go-Giver. There's a few of author friends that I have where it's like I don't actually end up reading their book until years after I know them. And once I read The Go-Giver, I was like, oh, now I know why we hit it off. We have such a shared philosophy.
Yeah.
And for people that don't know, haven't heard of The Go-Giver, I certainly want to hear the story about you, how you've built your business and your personal brand. That's what we talk about on this show. But I feel like it's so interconnected to the message and the principle that you teach in your parables and specifically The Go-Giver. So can you just give us the premise and the introduction to what the Go-Giver concept is all about?
Oh, sure. The basic premise, and it's actually a very simple one, and that is that shifting your focus, and this is where it really begins, shifting your focus from getting to giving. And when we say giving in this context, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing immense value to others, understanding that doing so is not only a more pleasant way of conducting business, it's actually the most financially profitable way as well. And it's important to note, I think, that when we say that, it's not for some woo-woo, way out there, magical, mystical reasons. It actually makes very rational, logical sense. When you're that person who can take your focus off of yourself and place it on making other people's lives better, right? Helping them solve their challenges, helping them get what they want, helping to bring them closer to happiness, right? However that ends up working out through what you do. People feel good about you. People want to get to know you. They like you. They trust you. They want to be a part of your life. They want to do business with you. They want to refer you and introduce you and tell others about you. So, that's really where it comes from, but it has to be very genuine. It has to be authentic. You have to, and I know you are, and I know the people you teach and who you coach and mentor are as well. It has to really come from a place of wanting to help, desiring to bring that kind of value to others.
Yeah, and I know you're such a proponent of the free enterprise system in general, and I think like what you said, there's a heart part of this of just being, thinking about other people, which I agree with so much and am so aligned on, and was an area that I've had to grow and continue to have to grow constantly and actively pursue, that brings a level of satisfaction and joy. But there is also a shocking element to this, that money somehow shows up as a byproduct of this. What do you still believe that? Why do you believe that? What other evidence do you
Sure.
have, with the success of your own personal brand or other people that make you go, if you trust this, it will work?
Because it's not something you have to trust on blind faith. It's actually the only thing in a free market that's ever been proven to work. Now,
Mm,
let's clarify. When we say free market, what we mean is no one is forced to do business with others. People
okay.
do it on their own volition. Now, this should not be confused with cronyism, where, as we know, whether big businesses, special interests, whatever, through their lobbyists on K Street, basically buy the influence of politicians to make laws and rules and regulations that benefit. That's not what we're talking about. That is not capitalism. That is cronyism. In a free market, people only buy because they believe it's in their best interest to do so,
Mm,
right? But this is great, because it means that that entrepreneur whose focus is on bringing value to others, right? Pleasing that other person, helping them get what they want. That's the person who, let's put it this way. I used to say, when I used to speak at sales conferences, back before the COVID days, when we actually went places to speak to
right.
at conferences, I'd be sitting in front of a room full of all these salespeople, and I'd say, nobody's going to buy from you because you have a quota to meet. Right? They're not going to buy from you because you need the money, and they're not even going to buy from you because you're a really nice person. They're going to buy
Right.
from you only because they believe that it's in their best interest to do so. And in a free market, which I guarantee you, you and me and everyone listening, watching this, this is how we operate, because no one has to buy from any of us, right? That's the only reason why anyone's going to do business with us. So there's nothing that we need to have, blind faith about. If we don't please that other person, if we don't bring immense value to them, they're not doing business with us.
And how's that showed up in your career? I mean, you sold millions of books between all your books. You've got all of these, places that you spoke at. And I know you've spoken at some of the largest. I mean, you mentioned the sales meetings. I know it's more than that, but specifically in the world of sales, you have spoken at some of the biggest and largest, kind of sales gatherings. Is that a philosophy that you carried into your career early on as a personal brand and it helped you, or is it something you kind of learned along the way that amplified what you were doing?
I think there are two aspects to that, and it's a great question. One is, I was very fortunate, very blessed to be born to two great people who they were all about bringing value to others. So I got to see that as an example. Now, as I grew up and got into the business world, I think I kind of lost my way for a while, and I was around people who did things in a way that probably weren't the best example,
Hmm.
and some were, but some weren't, and so I don't know what if I was necessarily on the right track. I think for a while it became more. Now, I always had a great product or service I was representing when I sold for other companies, so that wasn't the issue. It was a matter of the focus being on myself and the sale. Okay. And I remember that I was in I was in a sales slump, and I came back to the office one day, and I saw a guy there, and a much older guy. He was not even in the sales department. I think he was in the engineering department. Nice guy, didn't say much, but he was one of these people, and we've all met, that whenever he did say something, it was always very profound.
Sure.
And I think he saw me as sort of a Joe in The Go-Giver, which I would write about 25 years later with John David Mann. But I think he saw me as that young, up and coming, ambitious, aggressive, nice guy, but whose focus was on himself, but not where it should be. And he said to me, "Can I give you some advice?" Fortunately, I've always been a pretty good student when it comes to listening to people around me. And I said, absolutely, please do. And he said, Berg, he was a last name kind of guy. He said, Berg, if you want to make a lot of money in sales, he said, don't have making money as your target. Your target, he said, is serving others. Now, when you hit the target, you'll get a reward. And that reward will come in the form of money. And you can do with that money whatever you choose. But never forget, the money is simply the reward for hitting the target. It ain't the target itself. Your target is serving others. And Rory, that's when it hit me. That great salesmanship is never about the salesperson. Great salesmanship is never about the products or services, as important as those are. Great salesmanship is always about the other person. It's about the people whose lives you choose to touch with the value you provide. It's the people whose lives are a little bit better just because you were part of it. And I think when we go with that attitude, which is much more like my parents' attitude than the people who I kind of started to learn from, I think we go with that attitude. We're 9 steps ahead of the game in a 10-step game.
Yeah, I mean, amen. It's so good, and I mean, when I say Go Giver is one of my favorite books, y'all, like I read a ton, I love it, and I'm telling you, this is like one of my top 5 all-time favorite books.
Wow.
I mean,
Thank you.
I think because, and it's shocking to me how rare you hear this message that you're talking about, and particularly in the world of success, it's all about achieve, grind, hustle, grow. It's a very self-centered message. It's a very self-serving, accomplish, acquire, like, grow your influence, grow your title. And, I just am so aligned and believe with you in the same that all of those things happen as a byproduct of the number of people that you reach and the amount of value you provide. And I think it's so eloquent. So tell us the story about the Go Giver. Like, did you, I mean, 1 million copies of a book is amazing. I mean, this is so few get there. How did you get the book deal? How did you meet John David Mann? Did you guys like light up the bestseller list right away? Like, was it easy to write? It's a parable, right? So did you know you wanted to write a parable? Like, what's the story behind the success of this book?
Yeah, I think I can answer those really pretty easily. And at first, it came about because years and years ago, I had a book out called Endless Referrals. The subtitle was Network Your Everyday Contacts into Sales. It was basically a book on business networking, creating relationships. It was really for entrepreneurs and salespeople who knew they had a great product or service. They were proud of it. They knew how much value it brought, but they didn't necessarily feel comfortable with the process of going out into their communities and creating those know, like, and trust relationships, right? They didn't know how to, so it was a how-to guide. That's what it was. But I'd always read a lot of parables, whether it was, books like Og Mandino's Greatest Salesman in the World, or Richest Man in Babylon, or
another good one.
Right. And, I'm just trying to think, back in the late 70s, early 80s, Doctors Blanchard and Johnson and the 1 Minute series, and then friends of ours like Chris Widener and certainly John Gordon, and so many people who have these magnificent, books. And what I found is that, I'd read these parables and always enjoyed them so much and learned a lot in a very short period of time. I think, as you know, stories connect on a deeper level than a how-to book. Don't get me wrong, I love how-to books. I read hundreds, if not thousands of them. But I think parables connect on a different level. So I always thought, what if we could take the basic premise of Endless Referrals, which is all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. People have heard me say this for 30 years. Probably they're nauseated when they hear me say that at this point. I said, how could we take that and turn it into a parable? So I just thought, well, so what's the basic trait? What's the essence of a person who's able to very quickly and sustainably create those know, like, and trust relationships? Well, they're givers, right? They're always giving value. Their focus is on giving value. So that part was easy to come up with the title, The Go-Giver. But it was when John David Mann agreed to co-author it and be really the lead writer and storyteller, because he's a genius. I'm a how-to guy.
Amazing.
He's right. But so what happened was John was the editor-in-chief of a magazine I used to write for. And every month I'd submit my column, and he would write back. I'd never met him personally at that point. And it would always be just so kind and so fantastic and so much better than what it was. But he was always very polite and humble and say, is this okay? I put this here. Is this all right? And the running joke was that every month I'd, write back and say, not only is it okay, you write my stuff better than I write my stuff. And so, when it came time for the book, John was the only one I wanted to write this with. Back then, John wasn't well known outside of his niche. Okay, now this guy's the co-author, writer of choice. Whenever an agent or a publisher has a celebrity, a CEO, a athlete, and that they won't write. But back then, very few people outside of his niche knew John. Well, fortunately, I knew him. So I had asked him. So he was still busy though. And so one day he and his fiance, now his wife, Anna, they were at her mom's on the west coast of Florida. They took a 4-hour drive. We had a 3-hour dinner and discussed the book and what we thought it could be. He called me back about 3 weeks later and said, you know what, Anna and I talked it together. I think it's a good idea. Let's do this. So it really only took us a few months to write the story, but it took us 25 rejections over the course of a year from the various New York publishing houses to actually find but now along the way. And, of course, some of them were, well, we don't need another parable. There's already too many. Some were, it's just not what we're looking for. Others
Did you have an agent at the time?
Yeah. The McBride Literary Agency, and they were absolutely fantastic. But we always listened to what the publishers who said no, and we listened to what they said. Now, sometimes it just wasn't the right fit or whatever. But other times they had advice that was really good. And so we kept on, we chiseling it and improving it. And what we really did was improve the marketing package for it. Okay. Because that kind of came up, a whole bunch. And finally, I think the 26th one, if I'm correct, and that was Portfolio, a business division of Penguin Random House. They loved it. And I'll tell you what, Rory, they have been the perfect publishing partner, supportive and knowledgeable, and they're rooting for it, and so it's just been great. So it happened exactly when it was supposed to. But yeah.
And did you have a big old launch? Did you do like a big old launch? I mean, this of course is back in the days, mostly before virtual summits and funnels and lead magnets and all that kind of stuff. But did you have a big launch plan? Did you sell a bunch of units in like opening week, or was it kind of a slower build, or like how did that happen?
No, for that we did put together a really nice size launch. I don't really do those anymore when I have new books, and I don't really see excuse me, them being as effective as they used to be, although that might just be me also, because I also know there's launches that do wonderfully well for people. So I don't want in any way to say it's a, this or that. But back then, we did a really big launch, but also sold a whole bunch of books to different companies that were going to have me come in to speak. And I really lowered my fee to do that, because we really wanted in the first few weeks to really have a big buildup, right? And that helped, get the book on the Wall Street Journal bestsellers list pretty quickly. And we're very fortunate because the early adopters of the book were not the people who really needed to read it. The early adopters, because we received emails from many of them, they were simply people who were already extremely successful, had huge organizations, they were the this or the that, and said, what you guys wrote is just is how I built my business. Okay. But nobody believes me. So they were getting our books to kind of put through their organizations, because how it is, a third party says it and it's, oh yeah, well, of course. And,
right.
And so that really helped as well. So there were a whole lot of good things that came together at the same time.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that's so powerful about being a speaker. And publishers, even today love working with speakers because they know if you're a speaker, you're going to be out in front of a lot of people and they're going to buy books. And that was how we launched Take the Stairs. I mean, we were
Sure.
doing deals with the early clients to get them to order lots
Hmm.
and lots of
Hmm.
copies. And I was basically leveraging my speaking
That's right.
as a carrot to get them to do it. And
Hmm.
we generated a bunch of pre-orders that way. Did you, and for me, I wanted to be a speaker and kind of became an author out of necessity. And then now I kind of view myself as more of like an author, like more of a content creator than even I do a speaker. But how did speaking happen
Same.
alongside? Did you start speaking first, and were you really successful as a speaker, and then you kind of bolted this on? Did they kind of grow together? Like, what was how did you get your first speaking gigs, and when did it happen in relation to like the Go Giver?
Yeah. So I was in sales, of course, and then I was sales manager of a company. And I started after when I was a big student of sales, so I was reading Zig's books and Tom Hopkins books and getting back then it was cassette tape albums, right? It was the
Yeah.
and I was just a total student of sales. And I went to a seminar once, and I bought the person's tapes in the back afterwards. And in the back of his um, series, the album, there was a page that said, if you want to make some extra money speaking and selling these tapes, call our office, which I did. And they taught me how to speak at all these places for free, every civic club, group, organization, anybody that would have me in and do these 25-minute talks, and then like, a 3-minute commercial at the end, and boom. And I did that for a couple of years and, sold a ton for them. And it was great training. But eventually I wanted to kind of go into my own with my own sort of things that were working for me that I put together. And so I just, I joined the National Speakers Association, which you and I are both part of it. And
Mm-hmm.
you had mentioned about the Hall of Fame. You were inducted into the Hall of Fame, I think, was it last year, 2 years ago?
2019,
Yeah.
I went in. I think it was the year, yeah,
Yeah.
just I guess 2 years ago.
Yeah. So congratulations. And I remember I was not at that convention, but I remember when I saw, because I opened up the thing to look to see who were the CPAEs, which is the Hall of Fame. And I saw you and I said, oh man, that is so wonderful. He so deserves it. And that was just wonderful.
Thank you, buddy.
Congratulations. And yeah, and because at National Speakers Association, you who are there, the people who are successful, have successful speaking businesses. So I learned from them how they did it. I'm a big believer, Rory, that that it's not necessary, it's usually not productive to try to create the wheel, right?
Mhm.
To invent the wheel, especially when it's already been invented. I'm a big believer in learning systems, so long as those systems are congruent with your values. I define a system as simply the process of predictably achieving a goal based on a logical and specific set of how-to principles. The key being predictability. If it's been proven that
Right.
by doing A, you'll get the desired results of B, all you need to do is A and continue to do A, you're going to get the desired, right? So I learned from those who did it. And then at one of the meetings, Randy Pennington. I remember, I don't know if you know Randy, great guy. And he had said, Berg, you really should write a book because it's going to help you position yourself. I didn't want to write a book. I was selling my cassette tapes up there,
Mhm.
doing programs and having a lot of fun doing that. And doing pretty well for a couple of years. But he said, it's going to help you market yourself better. You're going to be better positioned. You're going to get higher fees. You're going to, so I did. And that's when I wrote Endless Referrals. And he was right. It was a wonderful marketing tool. But I'm like you. I'm like you. I started out as a speaker who wrote for utilitarian reasons. And
Uh-huh.
now I consider myself more of a writer and content creator who speaks.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, NSA, I mean, that's where I met Zig Ziglar and Brian Tracy. I mean, like just walking around the hallways. I
Yeah.
mean, It's incredible the people that you meet there, and that was such an important part of my journey. And then the other thing that's interesting is the more that I am around these really ultra like successful speakers and authors, almost all of us have a story about how we started our career at one point doing speeches for free, selling something for someone else.
Right.
It was Career Track or Fred Pryor, or in our case, we our former business, it was our business, but that was how we started. We would speak for free and then we would sell a ticket. Or like, I think Anthony Robbins, he sold tickets, I want to say, for Jim Rohn.
Jim Rohn, yeah.
And there's Amy Porterfield used to who today is like a big celebrity. She used to work with Anthony Robbins, I'm pretty sure. Like it's amazing how National Speakers Association, reading books, and then learning to speak by under kind of someone else's tutelage or umbrella is such a common part of the,
isn't it? Yeah,
of the success track.
There's a pattern there, definitely.
Yeah. Well, Bob, where do you want people to go if they want to connect with you and learn about all the things that you're up to and like what you're doing these days?
Yeah, best place is Burg, BURG.com, and pretty much everything's there.
See, that's a whole level. Like Oprah goes by just her first name, but just when you're last name only, that's like next level.
But it's also, you know what it is though, Rory? It's age. Because I remember, I'm 63. So when the internet really kind of started to be out there a little bit, and it was just there was a guy who I knew who said, and he was from the Silicon Valley, and he called me and he said, Burg, I want you to get Burg, this thing called Burg.com. I said, why would I want something called Burg.com? I'm never going to use that. He said, trust me on this one. He actually walked me through showing me how to get it. But am I glad I did? But, again, this is back in I think that was the mid 90s or something, late 90s or something like that. So it was age more than anything else.
That is classic. Well, Bob, thanks for sharing these stories, and thanks just for your wisdom. And I mean, just a career, as you mentioned, now a couple decades have gone by of just promoting and teaching these simple truths that continue to be true, and they'll continue to be true. And you've made such a difference on our industry and our profession and just on the world, man. So we wish you the best.
Thank you. Likewise, my friend and brother. I appreciate you greatly.